Our verse today is Galatians chapter 2, verse 11. But when Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face because he stood condemned. Paul narrates his experience with Cephas to correct a wrong doctrine in the church of Galatia. This experience had taken place in Antioch. Cephas is the Aramaic form of the word Peter, which means rock, and in Greek it is Petros. Paul spent some years with Barnabas in the church at Antioch. It was a Gentile church. The crisis in this church about circumcision had made the church send Paul and Barnabas to Jerusalem. That was the first council where the issues about how to treat pagan converts were resolved. You can look at Acts chapter 15. While Paul was in Antioch, Peter visited the community. He was free with them, eating with them. But then some Judaizers, that is, some Jewish Christians, came, and Peter withdrew from the Gentiles, probably not to scandalize the Judaizers, seeing that he was eating with non-Jews. That was the reason Paul said he opposed Peter to his face, and that Peter stood condemned. There are two elements here. He opposed Peter, and that Peter stood condemned. He opposed Peter to his face. Paul did not speak about the issue behind or gossiped about Peter to other people in the community. He was not afraid to point out what was wrong. Paul confronted Peter where Peter committed the offense. He did not insult him, but engaged in constructive criticism to correct the wrong. This is very important. It was to correct the wrong. Then Paul said he stood condemned. It is good to understand what Paul means. The word used here in Greek is kataginosko, which does not only mean to condemn the way we use it, but also to declare to be wrong or judge to be guilty. So what Paul means is that Peter was found wanting in his behavior. He was guilty of segregation instead of preaching and living out the unity for which Christ prayed. He was segregating between the Greeks and the Jews. What do we learn from this verse? First, we can correct an authority figure. Peter was the head of the church. He should not have done that. We should be bold to point out ease to our bosses, superiors, or church leaders, our priests and pastors. They may not always be in the right. The second point is we should address the issue, not the person. And the third point, our correction must be constructive to make a change, not destructive to bring someone down. Fourth, our correction should be based on what has transpired, what has actually happened, not on the person, who the person is. Fifth, and finally, we should speak directly to the person and not go behind destroying the person. Lord, help us to tell ourselves the truth when there is a need, rather than gossip behind the person. Amen. And I wish you a lovely day and God's blessings.